Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Coursetro. So today we're going to create a very simple app based on vanilla JavaScript, which is just plain old JavaScript without the help of Angular, React, or a Vue or anything like that. And that way it's going to really help solidify what a progressive app is in its most simple form. All right, so we're going to use something called Workbox here from Google, and it's a JavaScript library for adding offline support to web apps. All right, so this is going to help us. I really hope it's going to help solidify exactly what a PWA is in everyone's mind. And so the app that we're going to create, again, it's real super simple. We can double click this. And here we go. And this is just pulling from a public API. And this will work in offline mode. And it also will work in such a way that it will prompt a user on the home screen, or if you're using it on a smartphone, to add it to their home screen like a regular normal app will. All right, so you can actually use this app if you go to vanilla pwa.coursetro.com. Make sure it's HTTPS. Go there on your phone. Interact with it for at least 30 seconds, which is the default behavior of PWAs for mobile smartphones to be able to actually show you the add to home screen. And you'll see it'll add to your home screen, and you'll be able to use it whenever and all that good stuff. All right, so for today, we don't have a question. This is going to be more like a show and tell. So show us your first design ever. So you get a URL, put it in the comments. Maybe mention when this was your first design, how long ago you tackled it, and YouTube may mark it as spam, and I'll have to review it, but I will approve them. All right, and so I'll add mine here in the description of this YouTube video in the first comment, and I'll pin it, and you can see my first piece of work, I think 20 years ago. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys. Oh man, it's 11:30 p.m. I'm usually sleeping. But I have this new schedule. It's crazy. Yeah, let's focus. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're first going to create just a folder in wherever you store your projects in. So I'm going to put in make dir directory, dir, and the name will be users PWA, something like that. And then we'll also cd into users PWA. And then here, we're also going to run npm, the node package manager command for npm init-y. And that will just create a package JSON file in our newly created folder. In -y, we'll add just all the defaults. So we don't have to sit here enter through all the questions that it will pose. So then I use Visual Studio Code, so we'll type in code period, and that will launch this. It's a free code editor from Microsoft. All right, I use it pretty much in all my tutorials. Okay, so here what we're going to first get focused on and started, and we're not going to worry about the whole PWA stuff. First, we're just going to create a very simple app, and it's just going to pull in data from a public API and to display it, and it's going to be through 100% simple, pure vanilla JavaScript. So what we'll do is create just a basic folder structure here, and this is entirely up to you in terms of how you want to do it. And so you'll see how it will come into play though when it comes to the PWA stuff here in a second. So we're going to create a folder called build. Inside of build, we're going to create an index.html. All right, so then I'll worry about the contents in a second. I just want to get the file and folder structure established first. And then we'll have a, let's see here, a JS folder. Yeah, inside of our build folder. And this will have a file, and this will be app.js. And then also inside of build, we'll have another folder that'll be CSS. And inside of there, I'll make a main.css. You can make that app.css if you wanted to, whatever, no big deal. And I think it's pretty good for now, just for starters. We're going to go to index.html, put in the exclamation point here in Visual Studio Code. That's a shorthand for just getting your basic HTML boilerplate. It's very late. and I had yeah, a decent amount of wine, so I can't talk properly. And so inside of here, we'll go ahead and reference that JS file that we created. So we'll put in a script, and we'll put in an async attribute with a source pointing to that JS-app or / what am I typing? It's not a hyphen. It's a / app.js file. Oh man, what am I doing to myself? And right there, that's pretty good. And then we're also going to go back, Control B to get the sidebar. We'll go to our package.json file. And inside of here, we're going to remove this test script. And so, you know, whenever you run npm run, whatever is defined in this objects right here, this scripts objects will execute. So for us, we're going to put in one called serve, not server, just serve. And it's going to run in HTTP server. And I'll show you in a second, you know, if you don't have that, how to install it. And then we're going to specify a custom port. I'm going to put 1336 instead of 1337, just because I used that already and I don't want any issues with caching showing up. And then also build and then -c for caching, and then -1 right after that, which will disable caching. And this is all specific to HTTP server right here. All right, so that looks pretty good right there. So we'll save that. All right, so like I said, HTTP server, do you have that installed or not? Probably not if you didn't already install it at one point in time. So, you know, again, if you run HTTP server, it should work. If it goes unrecognized, use npm install HTTP server -g for global. You only have to do it once, and it will be installed in your machine. Okay, so now what we're going to focus on here is creating the actual app through vanilla JavaScript. So going back to our code editor, we'll go ahead and we'll refer to our index.html. We're going to have just very simple HTML here. There's only going to be a few elements that we're going to specify. And so in here, we're going to have an h1, and we'll say our users. And the public API that we connect to will just return like 10 different fake users with their associated information. And then we're going to have a UI or UL on an ordered list with an ID of people, and it'll be empty. Over here, we're going to have also we need to link up our CSS / main.css file right here. And just so I don't forget, let's head on over, and there's just a few rule sets in that main CSS file, and I'm just going to paste them in. I'll talk about them real quickly. We're setting the body. Font family is Montserrat. The background is this very light gray. That's the hex color code for it. Unordered list, getting rid of list style type. List items, you know, this is very simple stuff. Nothing crazy is happening here. So by the way, if you check the description here on YouTube, there will be a GitHub repo for this whole tutorial, so you don't have to sit here typing this all out. If you want to, just clone it. You can grab the code yourself. All right. And then we'll go ahead and head on over to our Control B app.js file. All right. So here we're going to create a couple functions real quickly. And so the first function here is one called create node. And this is going to allow us to more easily create nodes with vanilla JavaScript when we're taking the result from the API and displaying it within our unordered list right here. All right, and so there's also one called append that we're going to use, and it looks like this. All right, so just type that out. And I got these two functions from a Scotch.io article. I forget exactly where it was, but it just makes it easier a little bit when you're dealing with creating HTML elements with pure vanilla JavaScript. And then also we're going to create a constant called UL, and we're going to get element by ID people. All right, right here. And then outside of that, we'll go ahead and use what's called fetch. And this will allow us to put in the API endpoint, the public API. And I'm just going to use this time, instead of a really stupid, I did it in yesterday's tutorial, a Chuck Norris jokes API. This one is a little bit more common, this JSON placeholder.typebycode.com. So this just returns 10 different users just for testing purposes. So we're going to use then. We're going to take the response arrow function response.json, and then we'll take that data and we're going to say let people equals data, and then we're going to return people.map, and this will be a function which accepts person. And we're going to say let the li element that we're going to create equals create node, and this is coming from this function up here. And the node that we want to create is a list item. And then also we're also going to create another called span create node, and this will be a span that we create. And we're just going to show the username or the person's name along with their email address. I think that's what I did ultimately. Yeah. So then we're going to say li.inner HTML equals person.name. And this is part of the array of objects that are returned. This is a property. And then also span.inner.html equals person.email. All right. Then finally, we use this append function. We're going to append the li to the ul, or no, to the span, sorry. So we basically, what this is saying is we take this span element and we add it to the li. And then also we're going to append the li to the ul. There we go. All right, cool stuff. We'll go ahead and save that. All right, and so now if we run this, we'll go to our situation here. npm run serve, and that's the serve command we created in package.json. So now if we go here, and what's interesting is because I already developed this earlier, well, no, this is it. Okay, I thought it was cached, but it's not. What we want to do, make sure, is we use localhost 1336. There we go. And now it's returning all the results. And of course, this isn't a PWA. If I hit Control-Shift-I here, yeah, the fav, I'm not worried about this part, the fav icon not showing up. But we'll see that, you know, there's no issues, but however, it is not a PWA at this point because we haven't added that functionality. One of the ways that we know, for instance, that this is not a PWA is if we go here to our application, and if you hit Control-Shift-I, and then you go to application, and we check on offline and we refresh it, there is no internet connection because we've just turned it off here. It's not going to work. That's the default behavior of a non-PWA website or app. Refresh it, it comes back. All right, so we're going to use, as mentioned at the very beginning of this video, Workbox to add PWA or service worker functionality to this Vanilla.js app that we've created. All right, so to do that, we'll go ahead and we'll get out our console again. So I'm going to hit Control-C just to get out of the HTTP server. And inside of the same folder, we're going to run npm install workbox. Actually, let me clear this. There's a lot of crap up here. And increase the size here just a bit. There we go. We're going to run npm install, or you could just use I for shorthand. And we're going to put workbox-cli-g. And that will install the Workbox CLI globally on our machine. All right, so we've installed the CLI, or the command line interface, from which we can now issue certain commands to transform our regular app into a PWA. So the first command that we want to run is, and by the way, you use the Workbox keyword to call the CLI. And so if you just hit enter, for instance, it's going to let you know all the different commands that you can issue to it. So the one we want to use is the very first one, which is Workbox Wizard. All right, so what this will do is it's going to take a look at your current project folder and present you with a number of questions, all of which you can answer yes for this particular scenario. So what is the root of your web app? Which directory do you deploy? You can use the arrow keys here to specify what you want. By default, it's going to be build. Which file types would you like to pre-cache? All right, so you press space to select, or A to toggle all, or I to inverse a selection. We're going to accept all of these because we want to pre-cache these, meaning that CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, these are all necessary for our app to actually function, and we want them to work offline in the case that a user goes offline. So we're going to hit enter. Where would you like your service worker file to be saved? Build-sw.js is fine. Where would you like to save these configuration options? We'll say in workbox config.js, and we'll work in there. And there we go. So now what it basically did is it generated this workbox config file, and it'll tell you can go here for more details, and you can further customize your service worker by making changes to this config file. You could check that out on your own. So let's open up the editor, hit Control B, and we're going to see that workbox config JS file. So based on everything that we just answered in those prompts, this is what it generated. All right, so become familiar with this, and we'll revisit this in a second. So now the second part is to run another command, and we'll go back to our console. Let's clear this out, and now we're going to run workbox generate SW for service worker. All right, so basically it has created a file called sw.js in our build folder. And so it creates a service worker based on the patterns that were defined in the workbox config.js file from the previous command, the first command that we ran. So now we'll see this inside of this build folder is sw.js. And this is a file that we will not modify. And you'll see in a second, in order for this to work, we need to register the service worker in the index.html, and that will tie everything ultimately together. So to do that, we'll go ahead and I'm going to simply paste in a little bit of JavaScript here. And now, so basically what this is doing is on load, we're registering a service worker in the build folder, which is going to be the root of the actual app, called sw.js. This is our service worker file right here. All right, so now we can go back to our console, and we can run npm run serve. All right, and we'll go back here to our localhost 1336, and if we look at cache storage, we see a couple things, and you may have to refresh a couple times for this to work appropriately, but we can now see, especially in the console, we have our workbox, and this is coming from workbox that we're pre-caching, is responding to main.css and app.js. And so now if we go to application, for instance, and we go to service workers, we'll see we have a service worker ready to go right here. And if we go here to and choose offline and refresh, we'll see we don't get that it's not a 404 page, but we don't get that internet, your internet's no longer working with the little dinosaur that you can play with your keyboard. We don't have that anymore. It actually loads, but it doesn't load the API endpoint that we have from the public API. So in order to do that and make custom adjustments and also to load custom fonts and all that good stuff, then we have to run another Workbox command. But first we have to generate these files in order for it to work properly. So going back here, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it, let's see here, src-sw here in the root. All right, so just like that. And inside of here, we're going to put in just 2 lines that are of importance to get this to work properly. So if I hit Control B, hopefully you can see all of it. Yeah, it's import scripts we're using, and we're importing workbox-serviceworker.js right here. And then in here is our custom adjustments. And finally, right here, we put one more line, and I'm going to copy this and paste it off screen. Workbox.precaching.precache and route. So if we save this and then go back to our Workbox config file right here, we have to add one more property. And what this is allowing us to do, like I mentioned briefly, is we can make custom adjustments to the service worker. Otherwise, whatever is generated by default in this sw.js file, it's going to be overwritten every time we go to make adjustments to it. So the adjustments that we want to make will go here. And so going back, let's put in a comma, and in this section, we will have an SW source property, and this is pointing simply to our file that we just created, like that. And then finally, we'll go ahead and rerun, or not rerun, but run a new command. And you need to run this command in the console every time that you make an adjustment here to your to this file right here. All right, so you can console log, for instance, my adjustments, something like that, and we'll save it. And then what we can do is run our command over here, Workbox, and then it will be inject manifest. All right, so now if we go back to our sw.js file, we'll see we now have this right here that was written right into the service worker file itself. So that's how we make adjustments to it, not by modifying this sw.js file itself, but doing it through this section right here. All right, so now, for instance, if you wanted that the public API that returned 10 users to be cached, we would do it right here. This is also where you would cache fonts like Google fonts and all that other stuff. So that's what we're going to do real quickly. All right, so I'm referring to my original project here. So what we'll want to do is we're going to, if we wanted to take like an API endpoint and cache the results for our PWA, then we'll say workbox.routing.register route, and we're going to say new reg exp, and this is where the endpoint goes. So for our app.js file right here, where we have the fetch, this is the endpoint that goes right there. All right, and then workbox.strategies.cache first. And by the way, if you're really confused about what's happening right now, this and you're new to all this, that's expected. But where I gained all this code from is from the Workbox documentation itself. So I'm not just pulling this out of my ass or for years of JavaScript knowledge. I always look at the documentation, of course. And then also, let's say, for instance, that we wanted to have, and let me just show you what I was talking about in terms of the documentation. If we go to the the index.html, and let's say we wanted to have a custom font that we wanted to use. And let's say, for instance, you wanted to have this font, and obviously if there was a network, if you had internet connection, it would obviously load it so that you can have your custom font for your user interface topography. And but if it goes offline or whatever, and there's no internet connection, this would be lost, even though you have it here, because obviously there's no network. So if you wanted to be able to cache that, then what we would do, we have to first, we have this in here. We'll go back to our source. This is where we make our custom adjustments to the service worker. And then I'm going to load up real quickly. All right, so we're going to go to the main documentation, get started. All right, common recipes. I think that's where we want to go, right here. Notice where it says Google Fonts. We're going to take all of that and just paste it right there. All right, so there's a lot of stuff happening here. I'm not going to explain it, but again, use the documentation based on your needs. If you want your fonts to work that are coming from Google Fonts, this is exactly what you need right here for that to work. All right, so now that we made adjustments to this, then what we can do is go back and we'll run Workbox ingest the manifest, inject manifest, and then run npm run serve. All right, so now let's go back here. There we go. So now let's turn this back from offline to online. And when it comes to these PWAs and the service workers, they can be real tricky. Let's choose right here, waiting to activate. Choose skip waiting. We're going to refresh. And now you can see right here, if we go to, you hit Control-Shift-I, you go to Application, we go to Cache Storage right here. We could see that we have our Google Fonts that is being cached. Also, we have our main files like our CSS, HTML, and JS files that are being cached. And then also our API, which is coming from the users. This is being cached. So what this means is now we can go to under service workers and application, we can turn offline. And remember, before we added this, only this static stuff like our users worked. This didn't work. But now that we're offline, we can refresh and we still have the latest cached results showing up right here. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right. So we're not done just yet because here's the thing. If we go to our manifest section, we'll see there's no manifest detected. And what that means is if you want your PWA to be installable without having to visit an app store, be that on iOS or Android, then you have to have a manifest.json file. And Workbox doesn't provide you with the ability to generate that. So you have to create this manifest JSON file yourself, or use one of several tools that will help you generate the manifest JSON file for these PWAs that exist on the internet. So simply, if we go to Google and we type in manifest JSON generator, you'll have multiple options here from which you can choose. Here's one. So we have the app name. We'll call this user PWA. User PWA, same thing. Short name is what gets shown on the actual home screen underneath the app icon. Then we have theme color, and this is whatever your primary color theme that is associated with your app. If you have a visual identity of sorts for it, I'm just going to use something random. As you can see, it'll show up on the top bar up here. We'll choose that one. Background color, this is for, after a person adds it either to their desktop or mainly their phones, when they click on that little icon to launch it like a native app, it will show kind of like a loading / splash screen, and this is the background associated with that. And what it shows in the foreground element is the icon, the app icon that's associated with it. It's centered. It's a very simple thing. So the background color, you make this whatever you want, whatever is appropriate. I'll just choose something random. Display mode, we'll just use standalone. That's pretty typical. Also orientation, we'll say any. Start URL, application scope, that's fine. This part's real handy as well. This is where you can upload a 512 pixel by 512 pixel square icon for your app icon. I'll be lazy and just go to images.google.com and type in 512 x 512. And I use this one initially. I don't know. I'm not planning on making an app out of this. Hey, how about that one? No, that's not 512 by 512. What the hell? By the way, a pro tip, if you really want a specific size, we could say exactly 512 by 512. I don't feel like designing one. This isn't a serious thing. Yeah, I actually used this one in a demonstration project for this, so we'll just use that. Let's pull this down. Again, don't use this if you don't have the rights to use it, so I'm just going to use that one real quick just for demo purposes. We'll take that, and that's the file right there. And then we can generate a zip. All right, open that up. And we have our manifest JSON file and an images right there, and that's basically that picture I just showed you with different sizes. So we take both of these. I'm going to move them off screen for a second. Go back to the code editor. And Control B, we'll right click and reveal an Explorer. And what I'll do is just go into the build folder and drag those two things in there. So now we have our manifest JSON file. All right, so this is what the manifest JSON file looks like. User PWA, our theme color. This is all the stuff that it was generated from that little web-based tool that we created. All right. So then, in order to get this working, we actually have to include an element here that will link up this manifest JSON and tie it to this index.html file. All right, so there's another handy tool that will generate that stuff for you real quickly. Where was I? All right, right here. So we want to copy this. All right, and this generator in particular does some things that the other one doesn't, and vice versa. One of the things that it will do under helpful notes, it'll mention a couple things that it does, and one of the main things is based on your values over here, it will generate some of these meta tags for you as well that you could put in your the index.html file. It already includes this by default, so we don't need to include that one. But when it comes to a few of these other details that you put in, you can include those as well. For now, I'm not going to include them though. I don't think we, at this point, just for this demo, we don't need to. But we do at least need this, which I just put in. All right, so we'll save that, and pretty much nothing else has changed. So let's go back here, npm run serve, and we'll see if we are able to, let's see here, it's localhost 1336. Now I guarantee you it doesn't have the very latest version, because if we right click and go to view page source, it's not going to have that meta up there. So we're working off the old version here. And so sometimes you would need to clear the storage, clear site data, refresh this, cache storage. All right, that looks good. So now if we go back to page source, all right, so our cache storage, we have to refresh. There we go. All right, so now if we right-click and view page source, we'll see our manifest JSON file. And at this point, if we go to our manifest file, there we go. That's what we wanted. We can add this to the home screen, and in the case of a desktop, in my case on Windows 10, we can click Add, User PWA, we can hit Create, and that creates a desktop icon, and this is what shows up when you double click on it. It's kind of like an app of its own, and we can see the theme color and the background color and all that stuff right here. All right, so that's basically it when it comes to creating, you know, a PWA with the help of Workbox provided by Google, and getting that stuff working. All right, so hopefully you found that useful. So again, to answer today's question, which is more of a show and tell, link us to your very first design ever, and I'll go ahead and approve the comment if it holds it for review. All right, let's go ahead, and I'll see you tomorrow.